Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, that power within you so you can do your greater work in the world. I am so thrilled to introduce to you our special guest today, Jill Lublin, who is an international speaker on the topic of radical influence, publicity, networking, kindness, and referrals. Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
It's so wonderful to have you here. And you are an expert as a 4-time best-selling author. About getting noticed and referrals and Guerrilla publishing, and your new one about profit with kindness. I'd love to jump into that. How does kindness come into the profit world?
So profit of kindness, the deal of it is that what we discovered in interviewing lots of companies and small business owners is that those who were kind, wonderfully enough, had more profit, happier customers, more fulfilled employees, and surprise, they were usually happier too. And actually, I want to say usually it was in all cases. Just so we know, and we've actually proven now that profit increases with kindness. And that's a beautiful thing because kindness matters no matter what. And then to have profit go along with it, I just think that's icing on the cake.
Absolutely. And so, as a publicity company, people are always asking, how can I be more visible? How can I be more profitable? How does your company support in that? And what's your take on it?
So, kindness equals great visibility. It comes to my mind a couple things. One is the story of this wonderful young man who in New Hampshire had a dying grandmother, called up Panera Bread Company, well-known company, said she really wants clam chowder. Well, it was Tuesday, not clam chowder day. Friday happened to be clam chowder day. But the woman on the line, she was a frontline employee, probably making $8 an hour, heard what was in that voice, heard the request, and said, I'm going to make you the clam chowder. He showed up, and she gave him a huge bowl of clam chowder. She gave him a tin of cookies and, just her condolences and love. And do you know that story? Because the young man actually went on social media and said how wonderful Panera was. He called the local paper. And last time I checked, that social media story had over 300,000 views. Now, let me just tell you, did Panera Bread Company, did they get great publicity? Yes, right? Do they have wonderful people who appreciate what they do? Of course they do. So this is the thing around connecting your mission with just serving people. And that woman at the front has now been promoted to manager. They are mentioned in my book, Great Publicity. They get consistent social media viewing. So publicity, she didn't do it for any of those reasons. She did it for the kind reason. And that kind action is what generated tons of great publicity.
That just is so important. What is that next level of service? Like, how is it that you can, when you have somebody in front of you, that's belly to belly with someone, like, what do they actually need? And how can you serve them in a certain way and going that above and beyond? And so just kudos to her. But as we look at, what are the things when we're with our clients that would be that extra mile and some of the stories that happen around that? That has me remember some of the people that I've connected with. It's when they do that extra thing. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's done some voice lessons with Roger Love and was part of his program. And he's like the #1 vocal course or coach in the world. And he was talking about one of her sessions with him, she had her 6-year-old daughter, and he spent an hour teaching her singing and spending the time that had nothing to do with their session. And that just has me just feel more endearing to Roger Love, someone who I already love, right? But then you look at, going above and beyond, and what are those little things that touch people's lives? And, that little girl's going to tell all her friends, and she's going to, really enjoy that for herself and have a love for music. And what's the ripple effect of the kindness that we're doing in the world and have happened? So I love that you're taking a stand for this and that you're really expanding what kindness can do. And so many times in the day-to-day with business, we don't always look at kindness as being a tenet of business.
That's right. Exactly. And, it's interesting. Even the other day, I had a client who actually renewed with me my publicity consulting. The truth is she hadn't actually even completed her other one. And I said, what we're going to do? We're going to actually complete your other contract before we start in that one. And she looked at me and she cried because she knew and actually took wonderful full responsibility for the fact that when she had previously consulted with me, she wasn't quite ready to do some of the things. And what I did in the offering her of that, which by the way, her contract was absolutely complete and there was no reason I'd have to do that, but it felt right to me. And I just think sometimes you've got to do what feels right. And, then she looked at me and she said, and actually what she does, she did for my Profit of Kindness book and did this cool real technology on it. Now, here's a client who's extremely happy, who will go and, continue to speak well. And that's a beautiful thing. And I also think there's times where kindness is holding boundaries and knowing what your conditions of satisfaction are, right? And that's okay too. I remember when I was writing Profit of Kindness on the patience chapter, well, just try writing on that. And then I called my utility company and they put me on hold for like 25 minutes. And I have to tell you, I wasn't feeling real patient. And even to the woman, I said, I'm feeling agitated right now. It isn't you. I know that. It's just, the system you have. So again, I think just needing to express that in the moment, being kind to her, but my patience was worn. What do you do in times like that, right? And so I just think having, shall we say, fallback positions, what can you do in times when you're not feeling kind and still handle things kindly? Right. And, and if you lose it, then you apologize, right? And I just think there are nice things that one needs to do in the world.
Well, and I love the distinguishing, parts of that where, it's not maybe the person that you're talking to, it could be the circumstances, or it maybe is the person, but then, it's not the full company, right? It's a representation of that company. So to be able to really distinguish those things out, and no matter what's happening, I really think that's a tenet of character, is that how are you in the process? Like, how are you relating with other people? And sometimes it comes down to just communication. How many times have there's been a miscommunication, and then once you get to the bottom of that, to really be able to articulate that and take responsibility for our part in that. I think that kindness just goes a long way. And so I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And just paying attention, just keep paying attention. How are you being in the world? And what are you saying? And what are your words saying? Right. So that's important. And then there's times where say nothing is also appropriate. I don't like to engage in gossip. People will say something about somebody and it doesn't matter, even if I feel the same way, I don't want to engage in that. And that's just a stand I've taken in my life, that I just don't think it's appropriate.
Right. Yeah, it's good. Well, what about, so as far as like taking a stand on certain things, what about how are you designing your life? I mean, so many people let things happen by default and they just have them happen. So how are you actually consciously creating your life?
Well, one of my things is I try not to start my morning before 9:30. When I say I try, if I have a speaking engagement, well, of course, or tomorrow I have an early flight, that'll be what needs to be done. But on the whole, I like to start my calls from 9:30 on. That gives me time to meditate, to exercise, to play with my cats, to do other things. And I don't do all of those things every day, but it gives me the opportunity and the time in the morning to do that. And I found that by trial and error, meaning 8:30, 9 o'clock, too early for me to get on with people right away. So that's something I have found. And that helps me. I also, I watch my energy. And to be honest, if I am feeling really tired and I have a client coming up, I tend to just be honest with that person and let them know. I find, frankly, it usually works out. But I find that if I take care of me, then that's really helpful. I also take a bath at least once a week. And, when I close the office down at 5:30 or 6, I close the office and I don't come back at night. Now, is there always more to do? Oh yeah, Diane, I am sure you've seen. I think actually my to-do lists have babies at night. I'm not sure what happens. But
Right.
what, the truth is, there's always more to do. But I just think drawing boundaries, making time, making sure I have date night once a week and see my friends, preferably once a week. And, do what's important in life. And sometimes you've got to cancel other things because something else is important.
Right.
And that's just what is in life. And I think in Profit of Kindness, I talk about one of the key kindness principles is flexibility. And particularly in today's world, I think we absolutely need to be flexible, and that is a key component of living well and living the spa life.
Right. Well, it's so important. I'm such an advocate of having, not single focused, experience in life. I mean, there's times where, of course, a book launch or something in your business where you're spending extra focused time. But when we're looking at the totality, I mean, really our businesses it's a marathon, it's a long-term thing. And what's the experience and the journey that we're having along the way? Are we actually enjoying the process? I mean, if we're hating every minute of it, I mean, really, what are we building there? And how does that affect our relationships? And it's one thing I learned on the police department. His life is just so short, and to really be able to look at what is the experience that you're creating, not only for yourself, but the impact you're having on other people, and to really make an effort to enjoy the process along the way. And I think that is such an important aspect, about business. And I love that about the to-do list. There's just, I look at to-do lists as just being a brain dump. Like, they're just all the possibilities that could happen out there in the world. And then you just want to be able to choose like 1 to 3 of them, so you actually feel a sense of winning at the end of the day. I think if we set ourselves up to fail, if we say we're going to do these 20 things and they don't get done, it's that unfinished business, I think, that starts to happen. And I think when we actually create a day that is actually doable and that there's wins, I think that builds more kindness and more happiness, and the experience actually affects that. Do you find that to be, how that works for you?
I do. I have 3 things every day that I call them high value activities that I want to get accomplished, right? And I try to knock at least one out before 11 a.m., let's just say. And those include making what I call storm starter calls, people who are going to work with me, take my publicity course, book me for speaking. It's in those categories. And so I measure every day making those 3 calls, actually 5 days a week, right? I let myself actually take Saturday and Sunday off. And again, if I'm working, and then I will take probably Sunday, Monday off, right? Like recently I came back from the London Book Fair helping self-published authors get international rights deals. Well, guess what? Monday I flew in. Tuesday I'd taken most of the day off, but the jet lag was bad that week. I don't know why. I actually had to cancel a lot of my week. Didn't love doing that, and it just was, right? So again, for me, I've learned to stop making myself wrong if I don't feel well, or, in this case, it was jet lag, and to give my body time to recover. And I think for me, that's a big part of my learning. I'm used to being highly energetic, go, 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 very driven. And to be honest, in these past few years, I've really shifted more to let life flow for me, let the river go, and flow in that river, and not push so much, and allow things more. And so in that, interestingly enough, I don't override myself as much anymore, meaning if I don't feel well, I will lay down. If my body has jet lag, I will allow it to rest. And so I didn't used to do that before, Diane. And I think for me, that's a wonderful, it feels wonderful. And I say that because, you know what, the other day I was with this woman and she was clearly sick. And, I was like watching her sneezing and coughing, not to mention I didn't want to be that much around her. But truthfully, not only is she, shall we say, endangering others who are around her, but, I'm looking at her going, guess what? She just probably extended her sickness another week because it was push.
Right.
So, and I can feel that from people because I understand it. I used to be it. I just don't want to do it anymore.
Right. No, I totally get that, and, really looking at what are some of the shortcuts, what are some of the ways that we can not be working 24/7. As entrepreneurs, we sometimes think that we work all the time. And I love that you have boundaries around when your business actually closes and when you're actually taking time off. And, we've recently really, except when we travel, and there's exceptions, of course, but really taking weekends off, really taking that time back to restore so that we can be fully engaged during the week and be there for our clients and do the bigger work that we're here to do. So I think it's important to have those boundaries and really, stand in those type of things. And so I know part of your stand for your clients is helping them create book deals, and love to have you chat a little bit about, how you get book deals for your clients.
Sure. Well, one of the things as a publicity expert is I know how important it is to have a book, and I have 4 of them, right? So I've been through the process, and I hear a lot of people talk about the fact that they want to have a book or desire to have a book. So knowing how this process actually works, one of the things I do is I help people get book deals without a word written. And what the publishers, and I speak to publishers and agents, ones you've heard of, and I have really a proprietary way based on a one sheet of having them look at a book idea. And what I find is that when people have books, they have something to publicize and promote. That's a beautiful thing, right? So I've been doing this for 18 years. And recently, one of my authors was featured in the Wall Street Journal #1 and in USA Today. He's been in airport bookstores with a book called Pivot that, by the way, was not called that when we initially pitched the book. So I always tell authors, don't get too attached to what your book is called. And publishers love how-to books, how-to things. So that's really important.
Mm.
And then I have self-published authors, and they would like to get more global. So one of the things I do is I go to both the London Book Fair and the Frankfurt Book Fair, and I help people who are self-published authors get foreign rights deals. And what's great about that is you get to go global. The credibility is huge. And what's wonderful is in the market where we sell the book, for instance, what's great is they take care of translating the book and handling all the cover, and then they actually pay you in advance. And that's a beautiful thing. So that's been really, really wonderful. And, for example, there was one woman who was doing these wonderful workshops, small, in the Bay Area, more alternative work. And she wrote a book about it. And I got her a worldwide rights deal with this woman. And what was so wonderful about that is then her company got bought by a big U.S. More new age spiritual publisher. And then that company got bought by Simon & Schuster. So here's this one woman out of the Bay Area doing small workshops who now has an international book deal with Simon & Schuster. And they're working on her second book. So
that's fabulous.
That's exciting. And I just love the opportunity for people to get their word out far bigger, far better.
Right. Well, that's such valuable work. How rewarding to see people, in a small venture in their business and to have that exposure, go to the next level. And, speaking to the next level, how important is it to leave a legacy?
Well, that's why I have books, because I think books leave legacy. It's a leave behind of your good information that people can still read. Legacy is different to different people. And I think looking at what it means to you. For me, it means leaving good information behind. It means being a messenger of messengers. So I love and am greatly gifted to and blessed to be able to help others get their message out. For me, that's a beautiful thing, because then what happens is that ripples with every messenger out there. That to me is leaving a legacy that all the people I help are helping others. So it's an ongoing rolling blessing is a nice way to put it.
Yes.
And for me, that's a great legacy. So I think just deciding what is your legacy. For some people, it will be their children. For me, my books are my children, so that's my legacy. But I think take a look, what's your legacy? What's important? And then dip into that and enhance that. So that's a good thing.
Nice. Well, and speaking of what's important, as we look at spa life, that seeking power always, the powering in our journey, right? There are things that, take our power away and that we can feel disempowered. And then there's things where we actually stand in our power, and it all comes into, fruition in one way or the other, particularly as an entrepreneur. What would you say would be one time that you felt disempowered, and what was the learning in that?
Well, I'll tell you, when I broke both ankles at once in multiple places, that was pretty disempowering. It took me 6 months in a wheelchair to recover. And it was intense. I had to ask for a lot of help. And part of that was a lesson for me, is that I had been a bit of a lone ranger before that. I can do everything, kind of Superwoman-like.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying I had to give a lot of that kind of stuff up. And that was really the learning for me, was asking for help. Oh my gosh, and not that I hadn't in some places, but I don't think I really knew how to ask for help. Well, I'll tell you, you're going to have to learn how to ask for help when you're in a wheelchair and unable to, walk anywhere or literally do anything. So, and for 6 months, not just a short time.
Yeah.
So, that was huge for me. Then I started my own TV show called Messages of Hope, because really my commitment is positive media and inspiring stories. And so I got to interview amazing people, and that was a beautiful thing. And I did that show called Messages of Hope for quite a while. So that came out of it, and mostly really learning how to ask for help and how to receive support, which is also slightly a distinction there, made a huge difference.
I think that's the theme of the week. I've had so many of my guests talk about that, asking for help and being in a place where you actually can receive it. And part of a relationship is that give and take. And so many times as, entrepreneurs and as women, there's an over giving. But as far as, it sometimes takes something, that drastic in order to ask for help and to have a realization that not only you can, but that people want to, that people actually do want to support you. And I had a similar experience when I shattered my gun hand, which was a career ending, where it took me 6 months to relearn how to use my right hand, and having to learn how to do everything with my left hand. I had to even move back in with my parents. So, it's a humbling process, and it's also a time of reflection to really look at what's important to you and what do you want to shift and change and where you want to go. And so I think some of the most disempowering moments are part of our learning that becomes our gift, that we're actually able to have people look like, hey, look at your time and how you're spending it, and your relationships and what those things look like. So following along on the continuum of that, what about something that's really empowered you, something that really you just stood in your power?
I think really, particularly my first book, Guerrilla Publicity, when that came out, there was something that happened for me energetically. It was almost like, how when chicks get born, they peck into their little shells, and then all of a sudden they come out. That's how I felt with that book. It was like that was my little chick being born moment. And as I, looked at the book, and then I remember Barnes and Noble, I went to a book signing that I had, and my poster was big, and I went, oh my gosh, because when you look at your face big, and all of a sudden that opportunity happens. And it was exciting. And I think it was really a growth process for me. Not only, of course, in getting the book out, which is a huge accomplishment, and putting all of my knowledge into a place that people could read, but really it was more the energetic of receiving that book and opening it and knowing that was the first part of my legacy. And that really helped me stand in my power. That was pretty exciting.
Right. Amazing. Well, and you've been doing your work for over 20 years. And, some people may not know, you've actually taught on Tony Robbins' stage. So
yes, I have.
There aren't as many, female presenters in that realm. What was that experience like, and how did that shift your experience?
First of all, I loved it. I mean, Tony Robbins' stage and the people there are so incredible because they're committed to growth and they're committed to transformation. And I have to say, when I walked on stage, and there was probably 800 people in that audience, and then Tony introduced me and then gave me one of his hugs, which, when you get a hug from Tony Robbins, you could actually disappear into his arms.
Yeah.
He's that big and tall.
Yeah.
And so that was exciting, even that. And then just really holding the energy for that audience and knowing that I was in my power to be chosen. And funny enough, Diane, you should say that about women, because do you know, out of 24 speakers, I was the only woman.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me was amazing. I don't know why. There was somebody who had referred me into that I had helped greatly. So, I think it was partly that, but part of me really wondered, where were the women speakers?
Right.
And so I remember when I saw the program and I saw that I was the only woman, I actually went out and bought a skirt. I wasn't planning on wearing a skirt, but somehow it seemed important to stand a little bit in that femininity. And so that was very exciting. It was a very wonderful and powerful moment. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
So wonderful. Well, I think the environments that we create really impact us in so many different ways. In fact, one of the things I love to look at is, our home environment. Like, we feel differently in our bedroom versus our office and our kitchen. And so I'd love to know, what is your favorite room in your home and why?
Oh boy. Probably my bedroom, because I see it as a relaxed place. I do watch TV in there, and I watch movies. I'm a big movie watcher, probably 3 to 5 a week, because for me, it's a very wonderful way to relax. I love stories, and so I can get into other people's stories. Although I do watch them in the living room too. And my cats curl up with me. My bed is really cozy, like a little cloud, I like to call it. So that's probably where my favorite is. I have pictures, 2 angels on the top of my wall that I can look down and look up into, and that's beautiful. They're actually painted as a mural on the wall.
Oh, I love that. I love what people create in their space. I think it's such a reflection of how they're living their life and what's important to them, and just the experiences that we get to have together. So, I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you, and I know you have a free gift for them. I'd love for you to share what that is and how they can stay connected to you.
Absolutely. Well, I love to give gifts, actually. And one of the things I prepared is the opportunity to get publicity, simple and easy, with some actual tactics that you can use immediately. So if you go to publicitycrashcourse.com/free gift, you can get that. And then if there's anything I can help you with in your publicity or your books, or you want to talk about any of that and getting your message out, please email me to info@jilllublin.com.
Wow, perfect. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you here on the show and to just connect with all of your wisdom. So thank you.
It's a blessing to be here. Thank you, Diane.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, the greatest resource you have is your time, and we don't take that for granted. I want to thank you so much for being here with us. We want to, we really want to commit, or really have community here. And so we'd love for you to subscribe and share this message and get it out there. And I know some of you are driving your car and maybe haven't, really settled in so much of the information, but I would love for you to just think about, what was one thing that you got out of today? And we would love for you to put that in the comments. And if you have any questions, please tag both Jill and myself. We'd be happy to answer the questions and to just build relationship with you and just really connect on a deeper level with that. So just want to thank you all for joining us. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. See you.